We'll go ahead and get started with introductions. Hi, everyone. My name is Alejandra Arguelles. My pronouns are she, her, hers. So welcome to today's workshop for information sessions for engineers. Today we have four great panelists who are recruiters from different companies who will be providing you all advice on the do's and don'ts of your summer internship. So feel free throughout the workshop to be active in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll make sure to ask the question that you pose to our panelists. So we'll go ahead and start off with Steve as an introduction. Please introduce yourself, your name, and then the company that you work for.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Marks. I'm a university recruiter with Indeed. I use he, him pronouns, and I appreciate y'all having me today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy Ng. I'm a university recruiter at Intuit, and I'm also a UCSD alumna. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Ramirez, and I'm a technical recruiter here at AppFolio, and I recruit mostly out of UCSD since I do work out of our San Diego office.
And I'm Matt Waite. I'm at Teradata. I'm a university recruiting lead, and happy to be here.
Great. Awesome. Thank you all. As a reminder for folks who've joined us, please feel free to submit any questions you have in the Q&A. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and get started with the questions I have prepared for our panelists. So how would you describe the company culture like at the company you work for?
Yeah, so I would say the company culture at Indeed, I've been at Indeed for about 2.5 years now, is really one of balance. I've never had the privilege to work at a place so far where there's so much attention to getting the things that need to be done, and, using data to back up the decisions that are made and to, do things correctly and make sure that we're doing the right things. But at the same time, also the culture at Indeed really supports, having a life outside of work. There's no expectation that you're going to be, the only thing in your life that you're going to be thinking about or doing is working on your day-to-day job. And so Indeed does a really great job of creating a culture where things are getting done and it's a great place for people to grow, but at the same time also allows for a lot of freedom and, time to be yourself outside of the job.
And for me at Intuit, I think part of our company culture is, definitely learning fast and failing quick. Our interns and new grads are always encouraged to take on new projects and learn new skills and and they get help for those projects. They're offered a lot of support and, advice as an early career person who's taking, on these projects. And I guess engineers at Intuit are, constantly solving, challenging and meaningful customer problems, and while also evolving to new technologies.
Yeah, I'd say that at Folio, we offer a very collaborative and team-oriented environment. We're all about partnering and helping one another and our customers tackle difficult problems while at the same time helping each other grow. At the core of AppFolio is our inclusive, innovative, encouraging company culture that inspires our team members to do the very best work that they can do.
And Teradata, it's very similar. We just actually came out with summer Fridays. So we have no meetings on Fridays that are scheduled, but summer Fridays are with half days. So at noon, everybody's done working, just to have a little bit of time to find that balance that everybody's been talking about. It has been hard with COVID. I think everybody's struggling with that a little bit to just figure out how to unplug. And the head of our HR, our CHRO, has been doing a lot of kind of innovative, fun ideas with that, and it's been great, I think. So there's a general happiness when people are at work and they're doing the work they need to be doing. It's just a little bit more, I think those kind of implementations have made everybody just recognize that they're valued as people and that their lives outside of work are important too. So a very, very understanding culture that I've experienced and been able to be a part of. So that even applies, obviously it applies to our interns. So that's Teradata.
We have a question in the chat and the Q&A. So this is situation. I'm an intern on my first day. What should I do to make a good impression on my manager? And then situation 2, I have no technical knowledge on the product my team is working on. How do I catch up quickly? So let's start with situation 1 and then go into situation 2.
So I would say for situation 1, making a good impression on the first day is maybe not as difficult as you'd make it out to be. On your first day as an intern, you know, it's an educational experience. We're not expecting you to come in with 10 years of professional experience and know exactly how day 1 on a job is supposed to go. And so I would say just being excited and attentive and, you know, doing what you need to do on day 1, whether it's fill out your paperwork or anything like that, you know, just getting that stuff done and being responsible is the best you're going to be able to do to make a good impression. And so I would say don't shoot any higher than that, really. You don't need to be solving everyone's problems on day 1 or feeling like that's going to be what impresses someone.
And in terms of question 2, you know, just not having the technical background, just know that we don't expect you to have any type of, you know, very, you know, deep type of background in what you're doing. And that's why, you know, you're an intern and new grad, you're here to learn. You know, at Intuit, we have a platform called Degree where you can do a lot of like self-paced online trainings. And so you have access to a lot of different trainings that you can do. And then even within your own team, they will direct you to different resources that you can access to get up to speed on things. But just know that we don't expect you to know a lot coming in.
Very similarly to both Steve and Cindy, you know, we don't expect interns to come in having the technical stack that we have or the product knowledge that our full-time employees have. But I would say more than anything is that if you're engaged, if you're curious, if you're ready to learn and looking forward to obviously picking people's brains from day 1, that will make, you know, a really good impression to everybody. Because at the end of the day, that's what internships are for, right? For you to learn and build a strong foundation from. So if you can demonstrate that excitement and that curiosity from day 1, you'll be in a good place.
And I'm on the same page as all of them, all of you 3. Eric, what you said there, just demonstrating a desire to learn and to grow. That's what an internship's all about for the first question. For the second question, I think this is also what you may have meant too. You're not expected to know everything, but I would also say you may know more than you're giving yourself credit for. For our technical roles, that's part of our interview process and also what your experience is. So although it may feel like on day 1 that these engineers are running circles around you, there's a base there that you'll be building from. That's part of the internship, is to grow. So you were there for a reason and you should trust in that, find that reason and then grow that reason. So it may feel overwhelming on day 1, but that's what you're there for, to keep learning and growing. So depending on the position that you're in, you do have some base to grow from. That's part of our interview process. So trust that and grow.
So for the next question, how would you describe a typical day for an intern with your company?
So from an engineering standpoint, the way that we run our program is that each intern, after they are hired, fills out a short survey and of their interests, what they want to learn about, what they feel like their skill set is. And we have mentors from, you know, live product teams at Indeed that pitch projects that exist within the team. And I say all that to set it up to say that each of our interns day-to-day is a little bit different. But what they do have in common is that when you come in as an intern, you have an objective, you have a project that's laid out for you. You're going to be meeting with your mentor, who's a one-to-one partner of yours, to talk about your goals, your deadlines, your objectives, things like that. And so you're going to work really closely in the Indeed internship with your mentor and your mentor's manager to make sure that you know what you need to do each day. You know that you're on track to finish what you need to finish and to complete what you need to complete. And, you know, so that's really what's going to drive your day to day. But that's something that you're going to have the opportunity as an intern to really work with your team to figure out, you know, what does your day look like based on what you need to get done.
Thanks, Steve. I would agree with that. It does depend on the team. I actually asked one of our former interns, who's now a new grad, in terms of like what her day looked like as an intern. For her specifically, she said that, you know, she usually started around 9 o'clock, and that's dependent on your team. But we usually don't start super early here at Intuit, so 9 sounds correct. And, she would check some emails and get settled, and then usually they'll have a stand-up in the morning where the whole team meets up and talks about what they did yesterday and what they plan to do today. Then you'll start working on whatever your project is. And then you'll have lunch with other interns on your team. And then you come back and you might have like a once a week meeting on like a broader Intuit scale, like what's happening across Intuit or across your organization. And then you keep doing your work. You might have meetings with people from outside your team if that's what your project requires. And then you end your day, say around like 5 or 6, depending on, when you came in and how long your lunch was. And she mentioned, she wanted to mention that after hours is usually hanging out with other interns in the, because we provide intern housing, they would go rock climbing, go to the beach and just hang out with each other and get to know each other.
At Appfolio, interns usually work on the same projects that our full-time engineers do. You're onboarded, you're shipping code pretty much to our property management customers as soon as you're done with that onboarding session. Our goal for all interns is that by the end of the internship, that the teammates, the full-time engineers, don't even realize that they have an intern on the team. We want to make sure that all of our interns get real life experience, like a true job. So the goal is to make them and feel them assimilate as a full-time engineer. So, and the day-to-day can vary, right? We have one intern per engineering team. The tasks, the projects that they're working on can vary from team to team. And because those teams are small and autonomous, they even get to kind of decide on the schedule, right? Like Cindy mentioned, some teams like to start early, finish early. Most teams like to start late, finish late, but that'll be, up to the discretion of your team.
And all of that I agree with. And the thing I agree with the most is that the variety. Each of our interns is hired. It's like it's preparation for a job in every aspect. And so the team that you get hired onto, that's part of your interview process after college when you're getting a full-time job. What's the day-to-day look like? Each of our interns, it's not just a generic intern program. We're not a mini university. You're with a team. And so as you read through the job descriptions on our website, you'll be able to kind of build out in your mind what this job is going to entail, what the hours are. We have some continuous, some CI/CD work. So there's going to be maybe some on-call time with that role. There's finance roles that we have. It varies. And so as you interview for internships, you can ask those questions and say, what's a typical day look like? And feel that out and see, does that go with what I like to do, with how I work? Am I an early bird and like to be out of there early? Do I like to come in late? Do I like to stay, a longer lunch? Any number of different things, and you can kind of get a sense of the team and the community you're going to have when you join that internship program, that internship specific role. Because as you've seen from all of the answers, each internship is going to be different because it's different based on manager, based on position, based on role, based on what the team is going to be working on while you're there. So that's a great question for us, but it's also a question during your interview you're going to want to ask and then figure out before you take the internship.
Awesome, thank you. I do have some questions in the chat. So from a student, what should I do to ensure a return offer? So I think that must mean more related to when a student is interviewing for an internship. I think what a good way to approach this question is, what are some tips within an interview to ensure a return offer?
Yeah, or Matt, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. I don't love being the bookend every time. I kind of wanted to jump. So thank you. I appreciate that. I read it a different way, but in your way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I read it as, and this is what's important, what I love about our internship program. We don't open them unless you can get a full-time job offer after the internship's over. So we'll have you maybe go part-time in the fall, go back and finish your spring semester and come back as a full-time employee after you graduate. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I read it. How can you do well through your internship? And that's, an internship is a little bit like a long-term job interview, for better or for worse, but it helps you determine whether you want to come back, but also if it's a good fit. if you are a good fit for this role in this team. So for me, if I was an intern, I would be asking that question during my interviews. I would ask, is this role, if I succeed, am I going to be able to expect a full-time offer if everything goes well? And that's an important thing to find out. And it's not always going to be the case, and that's okay. But if it is what you interpreted it to be, if it is about how to just make sure you can get that internship, I think it is just connecting with who you're interviewing with and understanding whether come to an understanding with that person if it's a good fit. I think that's the best way to interview, is you're there to find out if it's a good fit for you and if you're a good fit for them. So just ask as many questions as you can to determine that, and that'll help you shine through, because it'll show you know the company, it'll show you know what you get yourself into, and it'll also display your ability levels as you answer those questions. So.
Thanks, Matt. I would also add to that you will have regular check-ins with your manager and your buddies. So make sure that as you're checking in with your manager that you're on track to meet your deliverables. Because if you're off track, then you want to know sooner than later so that you can course correct. We even have midpoint check-ins with managers and everything just to make sure that everyone's on track. And if we do need to course correct, like how do we help the interns? If that makes sense.
Very similarly, we also, when we have internship offers go out, we do so with the whole intent and purpose of hopefully converting every single one of those interns into a full-time position. We understand, again, like Matt mentioned, we also hope that the interns are interviewing us, interviewing the team, the company, ongoing, so that if it is a good match, it goes both ways. So that's typically what we look for. Obviously, throughout the internship, you get to experience a little bit more. You get those check-ins with your mentors to figure out where you're at earlier on, so that we don't get to the end of the internship and realize, hey, maybe you were lacking in X, Y, and Z. You're well aware of those things earlier on in your internship, so that it can increase your chances of returning as a full-time employee.
Yeah, I think what everyone said rings true with Indeed as well. And I guess maybe the only thing I would add is, that's also something that you should be working on throughout with your mentor, manager, buddy, whoever, to say, maybe you're getting feedback 4 weeks in that says, we'd love to see you, do a little bit more in this area, or, communicate a little bit better. And it's okay to turn around and ask those questions and say, how can I do that? Is there a way that you can help me learn those skills? That's something that they should be working with you on for your process as an intern as well. And so I guess maybe the larger picture being, you should never feel in an internship, from my perspective, like you don't know how you're performing. Like you have no idea if you're doing a good job, if you're doing a bad job, if you're doing somewhere in between. And so if you ever feel that way, like you have, you're not getting feedback, you don't know what the end looks like for you, it's okay to ask that question.
And then following up on some of the topics y'all touched on, what are some tips for getting a full-time offer at the end of an internship?
I think really quickly, just to Matt's point from the previous question, that's something that most companies are going to have identified about their program prior to. So usually you're going to know whether, a company has positions, converts new grads or not. And that's a totally appropriate question to ask a company that you're interviewing with. And so, in terms of making sure you get that offer, everything that we just kind of talked about in terms of performance and things like that. But that's something that most companies will have an idea of before you'd be starting as an intern. So it's totally okay to just ask that question. Do you convert interns to full-time hires?
If any of our other panelists want to answer the question.
I think Cindy did a great point about regular check-ins. I think that's the #1 way to keep it going, and show that'll keep you growing and learning anyway too. So I think that was good.
Yeah, I think for the most part, the most important tips are similar for all four, right? Checking in with your mentors, maybe asking at the very beginning of the internship interview if this internship could turn into a full-time role. Like I mentioned at Appfolio, we don't extend an internship offer without already knowing that we'd like for that to be a full-time role by the end of it. So yeah.
Thank you. And then this is a great question also that's in the Q&A. Is there such thing as asking too many questions? I fear that this would be a sign that I don't know what I'm doing and that I can't work independently. What are some strategies for that?
What my gut says is ask yourself before you ask the question if you've done what you can do to find the answer yourself. And if the answer is no, of course you should feel comfortable asking questions. But I think that's a kind of a good check for yourself, is to say, have I asked other people? Have I looked up in the resources that I know? And if you can't find the answer, then absolutely that's what your mentor manager is there for.
I agree with Steve. Make sure that you do your own due diligence. And it's like, did you try Googling? Or something simple like, did you try certain things before you ask the questions? But the thing is, I had an intern one summer who limited herself to 5 questions a day. And then at the end of her internship, she's like, why did I do that? You definitely, though, if you've done your research and you can't find the answer, reach out rather than being silent. And it could be 3 weeks before before you realize I truly don't know the answer, and then 3 weeks time would have passed. You may ask yourself, what if I don't know how to do what they're asking? And the answer is truly you maybe won't, because this is an internship, so you'll be learning. But we're definitely here willing to help and teach you and guide you, and you'll have a lot of support in that aspect.
Same as before. I agree with both what Cindy and Steve have said so far. I think asking too many questions is better than not asking enough questions. Especially, remember, this is an internship. That's what the internship is for you to grow and learn and ask as many questions as possible. At the end of the day, you won't be able to learn and grow if you're not asking those questions, those things that you may not completely understand. So I would say, I don't think it's a bad thing if you have too many questions.
And I was trying to pin this down specifically with the internship, but I feel like it keeps growing back to, in my mind, to almost an interpersonal skill, almost a soft skill that you'll have to learn to possess just as you're a working professional, and even in your daily life I think the best way to learn about questions and answers and things like that are paying attention to when other people do it, to participating and seeing what kind of questions are important, especially when a meeting has time and there's other issues that need to be covered, or when it's a one-on-one with your manager. If it's a one-on-one, that's the time when I feel that you should have freedom to ask whatever you want to. And then that manager, that mentor is supposed to help you understand, okay, that perhaps these questions aren't necessary. Here's a way to reframe it and you can find your own answers. They'll teach you to fish versus hand you the fish, that kind of a thing. So on the one hand, yes, it is very important during an internship to learn this, because especially if the job offers on the line. But on the other, I think you should also be free to pay attention in your day-to-day life, even in your interactions in class or with your parents or with your brothers or sisters or whatever, just how to know when perhaps you should not ask a question and other times when a question is completely called for. So, yep.
And for our next question, what is the most common mistake students make in their first internship?
Does somebody else want to someone else can answer this one first.
I can go on this one just because I think actually it ties in very, very well with the previous question. I think one of the most common, maybe not mistakes, but issues that interns may have on their first internship is knowing how to balance when to ask questions and when to figure it out on your own, right? So sometimes students or interns will spend too much time trying to figure out a problem on their own, but then that'll impact their productivity and their learning ability, right? Because they spent so much time trying to solve that one issue or trying to figure it out on their own. Versus other times, you'll have interns who will ask questions almost too quickly and they don't go through the critical thinking and exploring ideas on their own or how to solve the problem on their own. But again, I think asking more questions is better than not asking enough. So at the end of the day, I think to solve this potential problem or issue, come up with a plan and get comfortable with your mentor. Mentors are there for a reason. You may not feel comfortable going to your manager or somebody more senior within the team, but your mentor is there for you to feel comfortable with. So find a balance with your mentor to figure out, when should I come to you for help? When should I figure things out on my own? say similar to the last question, when should I ask more questions? When should I not? So it's all about that partnership with your mentor.
I definitely agree with what Eric said. And I just want to remind you too, sometimes that, an engineer on your team may have been there for 5 years. So they truly don't remember what the pitfalls are for a newcomer. So you need to ask questions because they might just say things that you're just like, what are they talking about? But to them, like they forget how it was like to be an intern and new grad. So it's very important to ask those questions. And, to Matt's point, it's a skill. It's a skill that you build over time. So even if you're, say, listening to a presentation, actively think about what you're saying and what is left out and where do you see difficulties. And then, practice, what questions should I ask, after this presentation? That just gets easier over time. But actively listen, and I think the skill would, become easier.
And I would say, not a positive outlook. So sometimes for me, the hard thing is understanding that things are just momentary. It feels like when I'm having a bad day that it's going to last this way forever. I'm going to come to work and every day is going to be bad. But an internship is 12 weeks. And if you really try to just spin everything as positive you can and get it in a learning and just have a good outlook, you'll learn that much more and then just have that much better experience. I've seen it go both ways with interns. Sometimes there's feedback that's valuable for the manager they've been working with that we work on correcting so it doesn't happen again. But then there's other times where it's just like there's nothing good that this intern could see happening, and it just kind of soured the whole experience for them, I believe. And so I think trying to maintain a positive outlook by focusing on the perspective of the short duration of your internship. It's only 12 weeks, which is a long time, but it isn't forever. You haven't just signed up for a job that's going to be there for a year. But and if things aren't easy, that's the perspective to have. But when things are really good, that time's going to go by really fast too. So treasure that time. If it's going by really fast, try to make it slow down. So it goes both ways, but just recognize that duration of that internship is pretty short and utilize that as a tool to help you make the most of it.
And for our next question, oh no, go on, Mark.
I was just going to say really quickly, I think a mistake that I see interns make a lot is also not taking advantage of things that are available to them at the wider company. We have a slate of intern programming and presentations and things that are designed for interns, but Indeed as a company has, tech talks, and there are events, especially in this remote world, for the pandemic. There are a lot of different opportunities, and our interns are just as welcome to attend those things as any other full-time employee. And so obviously work with your mentor and manager, make sure you're not missing meetings that pertain to your project or something like that. But, if you're interested in something and you see it advertised, just because you're an intern, don't feel like, oh, this is for regular full-time employees, I shouldn't be doing this. Worst case scenario, ask for permission. And if you get told, actually, this isn't a great time for you to do that, that's okay too. But I have a feeling that that's not going to happen often. I think you're going to get encouraged to attend those things a lot.
Thank you. And then for our next question is, what advice do you have for students doing a virtual internship in terms of networking and building technical skills?
I would say, it's a new space for everybody. I mean, people have been working remotely for a long time, but never kind of in this massive amount of people and with companies changing their policies and things like that. And so a lot of it, and it's going to be a challenge for those of you who maybe are, having your first professional experience, your first internship, but this is going to be a great time for you to kind of follow the lead, see how other folks that you're working with, how your mentor is interacting with their team. Is the team doing a 20-minute Zoom at the end of the day? Are they having lunch together twice a week, things like that. See what the culture kind of looks like and how other folks are handling that remote work. Ask those questions, hey, how does your team stay in touch? How does your team make sure that, they're getting opportunities to talk to other people? And it's going to be a little bit harder, but I would say the networking is going to be the same thing. You're going to have to do a little bit more work to seek those people out. But, other people are in the same boat you are. And so kind of follow those people's lead, but also don't be afraid to ask those questions about how to best approach those things.
And I'll add to that too, so last summer was the first summer we did a virtual internship at Intuit. And so we gathered a lot of feedback from our interns. And one of them was that they wish they would have met more interns from, other teams and other groups and across Intuit, because we're in a virtual environment, they can't go to lunch together. So this year, we're doing a lot of optional social activities, like game nights, including with lunch and learns and things like that as well. So I would encourage you, as many opportunities as you get to join those type of social activities, so you get to meet other interns and build that network. You'll find that you might connect with a lot of different people that's outside of your group. And we use Slack a lot, so you can just Slack someone and just introduce yourself and say hi, and build that relationship on your own.
Very similar at Appfolio. I'd say a combination of Slack as well as multiple different events that we have throughout the week for interns to be able to get into those events and kind of learn a little bit more about the culture, meet other people. But I would also say, in terms of Slack or just on a one-on-one basis, don't be shy or be brave, whichever one resonates with you more, in terms of reaching out to teammates or people outside of your group to have a one-on-one, and come with questions that will help you feel more comfortable reaching out to other people, and things about maybe different tools or technologies that you don't feel as comfortable with. One-on-one is usually a lot easier for you to ask those questions, but initially we understand that for interns especially, it might be a little bit harder to just take that leap. But a combination of one-on-one and just being brave and taking that first step, as well as joining those different events that the company has, will help a lot with networking and developing other skills.
And networking wise, Sheryl Sandberg, I don't know how long ago that was lean in, right? I think participating, but valuable participation. Just because you're an intern, don't be afraid to speak up in a meeting or in meetings or things that come up. If there's tasks that you want to take on, volunteer to take those tasks. And then finally, sometimes I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but it's hard for me sometimes to take on new projects optimistically. I feel like I'm at max bandwidth and somebody asks me to do something, my immediate reaction is not a great one. I've done a better job of masking that and then coming around and saying, okay, I can do that. And I'm optimistic. And then I get off the call and I kind of take a minute and get okay with it. And then it turns out okay. It turns out that actually that first reaction of mine is usually wrong. And so I think sometimes when you're given a task, I would take it and work it as much as you can, be optimistic and positive, and then just go with it. Keep going. And when you get into those new tasks and new responsibilities and new projects, even things that you didn't think were involved in the internship, you're going to meet more people. They're going to see your work ethic. They're going to see the things that you're capable of doing, and you're going to get opportunities you might not even see. We had a social media intern last summer, and they were hired back in a completely different area in a full-time role. So just be open to new opportunities and kind of take them up, positively, and then try to grow within them. And then, if you do that and you start to feel underwater, don't be afraid to speak about that either. But I just think there's opportunities where you want to lean in and just get involved. And then once through that involvement, you'll be able to grow and they'll be able to see what you can bring later.
That's great that the student was brought back in a different position. Going into our Q&A, I know many of you talked about networking. I wanted to focus on a question a student submitted, and feel free to just contribute if there's anything additional. How important is it connecting and networking with your teammates and the managers? I've heard that an internship should be 60% work and 40% networking. What are the best ways to approach a teammate or manager to ask them if they want to grab lunch with you?
I can answer, I think, most of the question. The initial part of 60-40, I think you mentioned, I don't think there's necessarily a specific number or balance of how much you're supposed to work versus network. Again, I think part of the purpose of internships is for you to learn and grow, function like a full-time employee, and at the same time, grow your network, meet more people, talk to other people outside of your own engineering team. So I'm not a big fan of like dividing it by a certain amount. As long as you're learning, as long as you're getting your work done, then why not be able to network and meet more people? I think if all you're doing is working and by the end of your internship, you didn't network at all and get to meet other people, then, half of the internship was almost wasted. That's part of the internship, is being able to network and get to know other people.
Okay, thank you. And then another question in the Q&A is, how often should I check in or ask for feedback?
I think we've all talked about at our respective companies that feedback is kind of baked into the process. And so again, I think that's something to ask, at the interview process when you're starting out is, hey, how does your company handle feedback for interns? Am I going to be receiving feedback, at different times? I have a feeling most cases you're going to find the answer is yes, that there are going to be formalized feedback periods, whether that's at a midpoint or a quarterly check-in or something like that. But if you find that the place you are doesn't have that kind of structure, then I think, as I said earlier, if you don't feel like kind of how you're doing, then that's a great time to ask. If you're chugging along on your project and you're having conversations day to day with your manager and your mentor and you feel great about things, I don't think it's as important to do as formal a check-in on how do you think I'm doing, how is this going? If you've got questions, ask them. But again, I think the bottom line is that most places you'll be interning are going to have some kind of formalized check-in process. And I think it's cool to ask those companies, how they handle that and what the cadence of them is.
Awesome, thank you. And then another question in the Q&A is, what should you do if you feel the work is too hard or too easy for you?
I feel like we've answered that one a couple of different ways. I think it's just regular check-ins and not being afraid to kind of speak up. And I think that would be I think the biggest thing that might not have been said right now is it would be in a one-on-one situation. I wouldn't necessarily air grievances in a group setting, or to someone that might not be able to help you. I wouldn't, to a teammate or somebody that doesn't. Save it for the person that needs to hear it, that can help you, whether that's your mentor, whether that's your manager, but not necessarily another teammate just to kind of have a gripe session. I think, especially as an intern, when you're only there for such a short time, go and be free to talk, feel free to talk to the person that can help make the change. So yeah, that would be the only added thing I think we're missing from before.
I think I want to add just my own, since Matt mentioned venting a lot to another intern. It's recognizing that that intern could be your coworker as well in the future company you work for, or a future supervisor, depending. So being mindful, of course, of your peers as future colleagues too.
I think it's a great point, Alejandra. And I think too, in line with what both you and Matt said, approach these things from a productive standpoint. If the work is too hard, you should be bringing it up because you want to make sure that you're able to get the work done. If the work is too easy, I know for us, we have sometimes our interns finish their projects a few weeks early. And so if they give their managers a heads up, like, hey, I'm way ahead of schedule, then we'll find something else, maybe another smaller, shorter project for them to work on. So if you have those feelings, approach somebody with them in a way that you are looking for a solution and not just to complain about the situation that you're in.
Mm-hmm. And then for our next question is, what is one thing students are surprised to learn about from their summer internship?
So I asked this question of the new college grad who was a former intern, and she said that the biggest thing is that you're not really expected to know anything coming in. And she But she says that that's true of even early career. She said that sure, you know, like in terms of engineering positions, you'll know how to code and you'll know how to structure a project and work with others. But the majority of the work that you'll be doing will be taught to you on the job. And so don't have anxiety over it. In her specific case, she's on the identity and access security team. And she had 0 classes, both in undergrad and grad school, that were about that topic. But yet she's here today because she, you know, interned with us, and the team helped her, you know, understand, you know, how her skills apply to the work that she's doing. So just knowing that you're really not expected to be super knowledgeable, you know, aside from, like, I think what Matt said, you already passed the interview, so you have the skills. We'll just help you, guide you along the way.
I would say that for us, some of the common feedback or things that I've heard, at least from previous interns, is that as a software engineer, or working as a software engineer in a product development company, involves a lot more than just technical skills, right? You need to be a collaborative team player. You need to be customer focused. And so there's other things outside of just your technical skills that will help you be successful in your internship, or really in any position. And then something else, another thing that came up, is that being a professional software engineer generally involves a lot more reading code that was written by somebody else. That tends to be a surprise to a lot of interns, how much more that is part of the job than they previously assumed.
I would say that the thing that I think most folks are surprised about, and Cindy, it's funny that you touched on it, because I was also going to mention, Matt, what you had brought up earlier, which is I think a lot of times that interns are really surprised that it's not as, you know, mysterious and confusing as you often think it's going to be coming in. You got hired because, you know, you did well on the technical portion of the interview, the team liked you and wanted to work with you, and your experiences in terms of soft skills from working on projects with classmates, or having a part-time job while you're in school, or just getting your work done at school in general, all those things carry over to the professional world. So sure, there's going to be some learning curves and things like that, but you're a lot more equipped, and we wouldn't have brought you in if we didn't think you'd be successful in the role. And so I think most surprising to students is how ready they are versus how ready they feel on their first day.
And for me, I think it's right along the lines of what you were just saying, Steve. I think is the thing that surprises them when they get here, not only just how much they know, but how normal everybody is on the team. Everybody smiles and laughs and gets together, and just there's a personal connection that people are seeking when that work. So I think when you're thinking of an internship and a job, it's like come in and be and do, you know, a little bit like a professor. You're just answering questions, and there's some kind of interactions that are somewhat familiar, but when you come into this, everybody's it's collaborative, it's mixing it up, it's talking, and you really get to know each other's personalities. And so and I don't know if that's a surprise of everybody, but I do think that's a pleasant thing that people get to appreciate when they start working, especially, you know, on some of the teams I've been able to recruit for this year. We've got some characters, I'll say, that just are kind of funny, and they'll throw jokes out. And just one of the hiring managers, he has like a big old green hat that he has in his picture on his he's a senior director here. You know, there's just funny things like that just, you're coming to work, but it's not a grind by any means. It's, you're doing your work, but you're also interacting with fun, interesting, complex people.
That's awesome. Some other questions, since we're talking about internships themselves, it's by the end of the internship, what do interns wish they did differently?
Even from my time interning many years ago, I would say everyone's biggest regret is always that they didn't do more, that they didn't, you know, attend maybe that, you know, happy hour that they wish they had, but they thought they, you know, should get something schoolwork done wise first or something like that. But, you know, take advantage of the things that you were able to while you were there, because once you're not there anymore, you can't take advantage of them unless you get invited back. So make sure you're making the best of the opportunity as you can.
I agree with what Steve said, and I think we mentioned this before, but I think a couple of things are they wish they would have asked more questions. And number two is like building their network, because sometimes you could be so heads down, like, you know, just remember to attend those socials and everything and meet more people. I think you're on.
Oh yeah. And then another question, thank you, Cindy. Another question in the chat is, how can I stand out in a good way as an intern? I know you all have touched on different things that students can do, but anything else you want to add to that?
So when I lived, anyway, I built a deck at one point in my life for our house, and I had two friends help me, like a good friend. I asked two friends to help me build this deck. And one of them would just, I could ask him to do something and he'd do it, and he'd find other tasks to do and he'd be doing those tasks. And I had to help direct him for different things that he needed to do. And another one would just kind of sit there, and then I'd have to ask him to do something and he'd do that one thing and then he'd sit there. Or I'd ask him to do that one thing. By the time I explained how to do it, like I should have just done it myself. And so I've kind of told this to my children too, just there's these two, you can be either one of these two friends of mine. And so whenever I go into a situation, I try to, this is back to that, how we ask questions or how many questions to ask, just try to be useful and look for ways you can solve problems that are existing out there, and not just standing still. Try to keep moving and try to keep finding things during that internship that can help you be a problem solver, someone that, you know, that the manager is not going to have to micromanage. They're going to want to be able to give you a task and turn you loose. And so as you continue to grow, it might feel, this isn't a day one thing by any means, but as you start to get your feet under you and you start to grow, look for ways to contribute without having to be told. And then also keep building upon those on yourself, like as things keep going. So.
Yeah, similarly, I think I mentioned this earlier, but engagement, right? Being engaged, similar to what Matt said, is I think intern students that are constantly engaged, whether it's with the work that they're currently on or looking for something else to do. Internships, again, are for everybody, for interns to learn and grow as much as possible. So the level of engagement, I think, always makes out certain individuals stand out a little bit more, because you'll have those that are very engaged, that want to be just proactive about things, and those that will do what's given to them and then just stand around, kind of like Matt mentioned, right? So I think the engagement, the excitement is one of those things that can really differentiate you from others.
And I would say to challenge yourself, you know, not that you need to leave your internship the best software developer or, you know, whatever position you're in, but at the same time, you know, we brought you in, and our hope is that after 12 weeks of working with your mentor and working with your manager and your team, that you'll be have better, sharper technical skills, that you'll feel more comfortable and confident professionally. So make sure that, you know, as you go through the internship, you are trying to retain what you're learning and that you're trying to show that in practice, because that'll really show the company that you're, you know, making the best use of your time while you're there.
And then what is the best way to speak about your internship experience in a future job interview?
With a positive spin. I think that's true in any job interview. You know, if you have a job interview in the future after you leave another job, I think one of the things that we look for when we're speaking with candidates is that, you know, there are bad things that do happen, and you can kind of read through the lines sometimes in the subtext of the conversation they have about that company. But if everything had turned bad and they've just viewed it as bad, it's kind of a warning flag that that person might not be happy in the next one they're going to. So I think not to lie and not to be untruthful, but to just try to call out the positive aspects and focus on those as opposed to the negative aspects, because every situation has both. But during that interview, talking about your internship and the things that you learned in a positive light reflect more positively on you. And then the second thing I'll say is when you're when you look at job postings in the future, you look at them as questions and you're the answer. And so when you're in that interview, when you're in the interview for your full-time job, what you want to speak about is your direct experiences, the things that you did, that you contributed to during your internship that answer the question of the job posting for the job you're interviewing for. So come up with clear, specific examples of ways that you've gained experience that are gonna relate to the job you're interviewing for. So specific and positive would be my 2 points.
Yeah, Matt, I think being positive can't be understated here. And I would also add, a lot of companies do behavioral-based interviewing. So study up on the STAR methodology. Just have, even if it's not on your previous internship, it's like previous projects. Just have like a framework in which how you're going to answer the questions, what you contributed to, what were the results of those contributions. So just kind of have those examples in your back pocket, before going into the interview. And in terms of at Intuit, we want to make sure that our interns are values fit, for our company. Read up on the values of the company and see if that's actually a place you want to work at. Does that align with your own values? And, before our interview, we even give you a copy of our values. So it's almost like giving you the answers to the questions. Like you want to prepare those examples beforehand and think about how what you've done relates to what the company's trying to accomplish, just like Matt said.
And then for our last question that we're taking from the Q&A, what does the last day of an internship look like?
For us at Indeed, the last day for our interns is pretty standard. You're saying goodbye to your team, and for remote interns, you're shipping your equipment back and you're getting that squared away. You're meeting with myself or one of my colleagues in university recruiting to make sure, that everything is squared away, that if you have any feedback, we have that. We usually do a little exit interview there. In the last week, our interns do presentations internally to talk about their time and what they've worked on so that other senior leaders and, teams and managers are able to be exposed to the work they were doing. So for us, it's more of a final week where we're really going to work with the interns over that last week to make sure everyone's happy and healthy and has what they need to get out the door successfully. But that last day usually will end with a goodbye to your team and then a quick exit interview with your university recruiter.
I would say it's very, very similar for AppFolio. It's more of a last week type of situation. Some interns, depending on their schedule, they might have to wrap up earlier in the week. And so they will have their presentations sooner compared to other interns. But yeah, it's more of a last week full event, both with their presentations as well as saying goodbye to teammates. We'll have different little events here and there. And the other aspect, obviously, from being remote, them being able to ship their equipment and things of that sort. But yeah, it's definitely not a day, more of a week, sometimes two.
And it's the same, I think, at Teradata. It's a week-long process. There's final presentations. When we did COVID, it was virtual, and so we kind of downsized that a little bit and just did it with the team. Each team had their own kind of presentation about what they covered. When it wasn't that way, we had a poster presentation, a whole thing on campus where we had posters set up and everybody could talk about what they did. I think we'll be returning to that. We'll be returning to that next year. We're virtual this summer. And then, yeah, it's just a roll off. Everybody says goodbye to you. You might have a meeting where just like a sit around a happy hour kind of a thing, where everybody just says goodbye. You talk about it, and so there'll be formal things, but there'll also be informal goodbyes and just pinging with people, saying goodbye, keeping in touch. That's where your networking kind of comes in handy. You can send an email to your team and say, it's been great working with you. I've learned all these things. And, I hope to work with you again in the future. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. Here's my connection. And then here's my personal email address, my personal number, so that they can get a hold of you outside of it. Because, they're going to be used to using your company address, your email address. So when you're gone from that, there's no getting back on that one. So just use it as an opportunity to say goodbye, wrap up and consolidate knowledge, and also to solidify that networking piece of your internship.
Thank you so much, everyone. I know I want to respect our panelists' time, so I just want to ask, I know there's this question about, is it appropriate to ask to come back at the end of the internship? And then my last question for y'all is a parting thought. If y'all just want to combine, if there's anything you want to add to that question, and then we will wrap up.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, everybody, for y'all's time. In terms of asking about returning, it's a little bit, you're more than welcome to ask. I will tell you totally transparently, excuse me, that if we have, the runway to make that offer to you because you performed well and we know we have the open head approved, we're going to make those return offers to students if and when we can, for sure. It's not something we can always guarantee, but it's something that we really like to do. We also understand that sometimes it's not super helpful to get an offer from a company 3 weeks before your final school year starts. I know that feels good sometimes, but also we want to respect your ability to maybe interview other places and not put a decision in front of you to make in that moment. And so that's something that's, even expressing to the company, hey, I would love to return, if an offer were to come my way. That's a great way to communicate that you're happy and want to return, but it also doesn't necessarily necessitate that an offer comes to you that day or anything like that. And then just in closing, I would say, at all these companies, you have mentors and managers, but you also are part of a university recruiting program. You have access to the university recruiters, to folks that do this for a living, that talk to students and work with students in these roles. And so, as great as it's going to be to learn the professional ropes of working with your mentors and managers, also if you're ever unsure about something, you don't know how to approach your team about something, there are going to be resources for you outside of that individual team that should be there to help. So always make sure you're keeping in touch with your recruiter or your program manager or whoever that person is for you, because they're going to be there to help a lot as well.
Yes, I would say, to Steve's point, the goal of our internship program is to convert you into a full-time employee. And, you'll be having a last day chat with a recruiter. So that's the time, if you have any questions in regards to like return offers and whatnot, that's the time to ask, because a lot of information is going to be, provided on that chat. Just in terms of tips, I would say keep an open mind. Stay positive, keep an open mind, say yes to everything. This is the time to really explore. What you don't want to do is narrow in on one thing. Say you think that you're I'm a mobile engineer, so that's all I'm going to do. That's great, but you might find that just like the new grad that I was talking to, she didn't realize she was interested in security until, she just kind of randomly, was exposed to it. So you never know what is going to spark your interest. So keep an open mind and try everything.
Yeah, so similar to what Steve mentioned, right? Our goal is to extend full-time offers by the end of the internship. Also, there's some logistical things that it may depend. Maybe it's a full-time offer, or maybe it's a return for a summer internship the following year if you're not ready to graduate quite just yet. So anyway, that's on the offers. In terms of a parting thought, I'd like I've mentioned throughout our conversation today, internships are an investment on yourself. So don't waste these opportunities, right? This is again where you get to build on your foundation. That eventually that foundation is what will set you up for a full-time opportunity, whether it's with Appfolio, with Indeed, with any other company. Don't waste those opportunities with the internships that you do get. So that's my parting thought, at least for interns.
One last time as a bookend. I think the biggest thing that has been emphasized is just positive and open mind. And Cindy, I think I would have just been done after what you said. I think being open-minded and being willing to take on new tasks to learn as much as you can in a practical situation is invaluable. And just keep growing and learning and embracing it, because like I said, it's just a short time, but value that time for what it is and make the most of it.
Great. Thank you all for attending today. We're really happy that the Corporate Affiliates Program on campus was able to recruit you all to be our awesome panelists. As a reminder to everyone, This recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, and I'll be sharing it afterward with our panelists. Thank you all for attending, and have a great Thursday. And I know some of you, it's your 3-day weekend or the start to your 4-day weekend. So again, have a great weekend.
Thank you for having us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.